Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to talk a little bit more about ASUs, as those are actually one thing that I'm super excited for, more than new champions, more than any other content updates, skins, new game modes, whatever. I don't care about any of that. I am super excited about ASUs, and so today I wanted to talk a little bit more about ASUs and what I think are the most likely candidates to get ASUs next. Now, there is a huge list of champions that all need ASUs. By my count, or by my opinion, I guess I should say, I have no idea what Riot are using for their criteria to decide who gets ASUs or not. By my count, there are like 40 or so champions that could use an ASU. That's a lot. That's almost a third of the roster here, guys. So there's a ton of champions that are potentially up. We almost certainly know that Caitlyn is getting one, guys. We saw the TFT trailer where Caitlyn was on the map and she was using a new skin, new appearance, new animations. So we're almost certainly going to say that Caitlyn is the first ASU. But who is going to be after Caitlyn, I think, is the big question, especially given that there are so many champions that need it, and people are really excited to know if their favorite champion is going to be up for one next. So today's video is going to be speculating a little bit about which champions I think are most likely to not only get an ASU, but to get an ASU first. Now, I've come up with some criteria here that I'm using to determine if a champion is going to get an ASU or not, which I think is fairly solid here. The first is that the champion needs solid gameplay. There can be essentially no quirks with gameplay at all, or otherwise the champion would be up for a full VGU instead. This is the reason why I disqualify champions like Zilean. Zilean's kit is a little wonky, especially with how his passive works, and it's one of the only passes in the game that stops being relevant after level 18 or so, and after your whole team hits level 18. Like, very few other champions in the game have a passive that just doesn't do anything for them after that point. So, in that regard, I disqualify a champion like Zilean, but so the champions need solid gameplay. If there's even a little bit of quirkiness with the way their kit works or the way an ability works, I would disqualify them from ASU eligibility. Second, the champion needs a dated model. This is pretty obvious, but in this regard, I disqualify most of the champions released post-2013, since they're all mostly there in terms of visuals. There are a couple of champions, especially like Zyra or Jace, where I could see Riot maybe giving them a little bit of a brush up, making them look slightly nicer. Their gameplay is totally fine, but being able to push their visuals in one way or another. Voiceover especially is one thing why I think some of the early 2013 champions could theoretically be included, but generally speaking, I think I'd probably get rid of most of the champions released in 2013 or later, because they're just solid enough from a thematic perspective that they don't need an ASU. Additionally, the champion can't be up for a VGU. This is sort of obvious. It goes on to the first point I made, that the champion needs solid gameplay, or otherwise they'd be up for a VGU, and if they're up for a VGU, they can't get an ASU. This immediately disqualifies Nocturne, Quinn, Shyvana, and Skarner from contention, because those champions were all on the previous poll. They weren't voted in, but we know that they're going to be looked at for a VGU in the future. Finally, we go into a couple of things that I don't think are necessarily correct, but which I think have a fairly good basis in what we know about how Riot works. First of these is that ideally the champion has appeared in other media, right? Specifically said, they're trying to unify the appearance of their champions across all of their media. This generally means Legends of Runeterra, but remember there are a lot of animations as well that have updated designs for champions that people really got behind. So in that regard, I would expect that any champion that's appeared in an animation, or any champion that's in Legends of Runeterra that looks different from their current League of Legends design, to be a fairly good candidate for an ASU. Ideally, the champion is also from Piltover and Zaun. This is a little bit more wonky, especially because I think it'll only hold true for until the end of the year, but Riot like to bundle content together with big releases. We're basically guaranteed a Piltover and Zaun event in the near future. Arcane is going to be coming out very soon. The next TFT set includes Piltover and Zaun champions and has a bit of an inventor-type feel to it, and the next champion is almost certainly from Zaun, in addition to the champion being released afterwards. So, in that regard, right, and Riot even said those two champions were considered for an event, but eventually they decided they weren't quite there, so they pushed them out a little bit further instead of changing the character to suit the event. But in that regard, I think it's a pretty good indication that we do have a Piltover and Zaun event coming in the future, and so it makes a lot of sense for Riot to then try and get an ASU out as well for this event to say, hey, if you're not interested in Arcane, if you're not interested in new champions, if you're not interested in TFT, at the very least we can say, look at this champion we just reworked. Caitlyn is a good example of this. I feel like the Caitlyn ASU will come out alongside this event, but remember, it's Piltover and Zaun. With Caitlyn being a Piltover champion, I would expect to see a Zaunite champion up for an ASU as well. So with all this criteria said, let's go ahead and look at the options. At number 5 is Blitzcrank. He's from Piltover and Zaun. He has a dated model with super good gameplay, and he's appeared in 2 cinematics, the Wild Rift trailer, and then also the Rise cinematic from a while back. So in that regard, he's appeared in other media, so we know what an updated Blitzcrank could look like. He has super good gameplay, but he looks really bad. His animations, his rig, his voiceover, all of it's awful. And he's from Zaun, more importantly, which means that he's potentially our Zaun rep for the new Piltover and Zaun event. He also could play a role in Arcane, so there's a potential double whammy. We know Victor is showing up in Arcane, and Victor creates Blitzcrank around this time period, if I'm guessing the time period of Arcane correctly. Also, if you guys want to see a video about my speculation on Arcane, let me know in the comments. I would love to talk about it, but I'm not sure if I have the audience for it, so let me know all that down in the comments. But either way, Blitzcrank definitely at number 5 here. At number 4, I'm going to label Misfortune. Now, she actually almost got more or less an ASU back during the Burning Tides event. She got an updated, not rig, but the textures on Misfortune all got updated a little bit during the Burning Tides event, and Riot talked very seriously about doing a voiceover update shortly thereafter, because Burning Tides is where Misfortune went from a, oh haha, sexy pirate character into a very solid, badass character in her own right, and actually had a personality and had goals and drive, and she's actually one of the most recurring champions in the story, period. Like in all of League of Legends. She's shown up in like a half dozen stories by this point. She's been in multiple cinematics. She has a card in Legends of Runeterra. There's a ton of places where Misfortune has shown up. And like I said before, Riot already talked about doing a voiceover update, but they weren't able to do it because people couldn't agree if they wanted to maintain the sexy pirate angle or if they wanted to go for the more badass Misfortune. I personally think you can maintain an edge of sexiness in Misfortune even if you make her super badass, but that's just me. But either way, it's been a long time since then. I feel like people have sort of come around to more badass Misfortune. We are not going to get Captain Misfortune as her new appearance, but her Legends of Runeterra appearance is super good, and I wouldn't be opposed at all if that became her canon appearance, and then we still had Captain Misfortune as a skin. So definitely Misfortune here at number 4. Moving on to Teemo. Love him or hate him, he is popular, and so I'm going to put him here at number 3. His gameplay is great, and in all honesty, he's not that bad in terms of an ASU, because his appearance is fine, and even his Legends of Runeterra card uses his current appearance. The biggest problem are just his rig is ancient, and so are those textures. If you updated them just to keep his appearance the same, but have it maybe be a little bit more shiny, give him a new rig and new animations and a new voiceover, I think he'd be totally fine. So I feel like Teemo is sort of a shoe-in for the list here. So I really feel like Teemo is going to be up for it as well. He's got super solid gameplay. I know Riot talked about doing a mini rework on Teemo a while back, but they elected to not do that. So in that regard, I feel like Teemo is definitely a good candidate for an ASU. He's also in Legends of Runeterra, so there's that. Moving on to number 2, we've got Riven. She's a perennial favorite, and a large majority of the community voiced support for her Awakened design versus her current design. Everyone fell in love with the Awakened design versus what she actually looks like. That design is what was used in Legends of Runeterra when Riot added her to that game. So in that regard, she's been in a lot of media. Her gameplay is super solid. Her mains absolutely love her, and it feels like she's almost never in the patch notes, which is a super good thing for a champion because it means that they are fairly balanced in that regard. Like I said, she's very popular, so I'd guess it's only a matter of time before Riot make her Legends of Runeterra and Awakened design canon in League of Legends via an ASU. And finally, at number 1, I'm going to go with Ashe here. I talked a little bit about how Riven and Misfortune are popular, but Ashe is like arguably Miss League of Legends. Like, she is one of the original 40 champions. She showed up in the first ever League of Legends cinematic. She's the first champion players played at when they initially learned the game a while ago as the sort of first champion that anyone gets to play in the game. She's one of the cheapest champions to get. There's so much support for Ashe. She's made appearances in just about every world cinematic. Everyone knows Ashe. If you think about League of Legends, Ashe is probably one of the first 10 champions you name off the top of your head. That's just how popular she is and how well known she is. Her gameplay as well is super tight. Ashe is another champion that's been out of the patch notes for quite some time, and she sort of ebbs and flows from pro play viability or not being good enough for pro, but still being a very solid champion. She's in Legends of Runeterra as one of the original champion cards, no less, which tells you how popular she is, and she already has an updated voiceover is the most important thing here. There's nothing for Riot to do in terms of VO, which means that all she needs is a new model and new animations and maybe an updated splash art. So I would absolutely love to see Ashe get updated. I feel like she, in the same vein as Teemo, is just a super big shoe-in, and she will be one of the first ASUs to happen. Obviously not the first because Piltover and Zaun event, but certainly sooner rather than later. But let me know which champions you guys want to get ASU'd most down in the comment section below. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts about what you think is going to get ASU'd, or potentially which champions you want to be ASU'd next. I'd love to hear your comments about that. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.